cannabis prohibition started. They used racism as well as misinformation. Harry J. Ansler started to begin to spread the false government reports of cannabis-induced madness, violence, and crime using the power of the mass media. Two of the best movies that came out was called Reefer Madness and The Devil's Weed. They would even show Reefer Madness in schools. Police would state that some of the most gruesome crimes were done by people underneath the influence of marijuana in an effort to help keeping it illegal. The government would even say that using it would make you end up in an insane asylum. Osler would use racism as a way to gain public support, saying that colored students were partying with white female students in colleges, smoking marijuana, and resulting in pregnancy. He also stated that there were 100,000 total marijuana smokers in the U.S. Most are African American, Hispanics, Filipinos, as well as entertainers. Their satanic music, jazz, and swing was the result of smoking marijuana. This marijuana causes white females to seek sexual relationships with African American entertainers and as well as other types of entertainers. It also makes African Americans think that they are as good as white men. As early as 1910, the alleged dangers of cannabis were publicized in the southern states in an effort to further turn the public against Mexican immigrants. This shows he used satanic music, minorities, and sex to win over white voters in efforts to make it illegal. I also want to point out one other thing that a lot of people don't necessarily understand. Our founding fathers used hemp. George Washington considered it one of his top 3 cash crops. So let's think about that for a second. Back in the day, even before the Revolutionary War, England would ask the colonies to produce more hemp. They used it for everything, for sails, for rope, for clothing, medicine. And this is why George Washington knew that it was one of his cash crops. Benjamin Franklin also considered it one of the best cash crops in the Americas. So, moving on. This criminalization has turned 81 years old this year. By the way, Harry Ansler was the commissioner of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, the DEA predecessor, meaning beforehand. I should mention, powerful business owners played a part in making it illegal as well. One such person was the founder of Levi Jeans, due to hemp being much cheaper to use to make clothing. Also, the timber industry, due for the same reason. Hemp is far less damaging to the environment as well as cheaper to use for paper, binding material for books, etc., etc. So the timber industry really wanted to get their voice out there to help with keeping it illegal based on that. See, the plant itself can be used for everything, from clothing, paper, medicine, fuel, and all. There's estimated over 50,000 commercial uses for it. Up until about 100 years ago, even Bibles were made out of hemp. The amount of commercial uses caused a lot of businesses to throw money towards efforts to making it illegal. It is my thought that the same companies keep trying to do the same method. Only we're not as naive as we used to be as a society. But they are still throwing money at campaigns to try to make it illegal due to the fact that it's a lot safer to use for medicines and other stuff. We'll get to that in a little bit. I have never in my lifetime ever came across an overdose of smoking pot. In fact, there are countless benefits to it, including treating mental disorders. These treatments are far safer than a lot of medicines that are out there. Majority of the United States of America supports the legalization efforts. Here are some very good examples of things that could happen with the legalization of marijuana. The prison population would drop rapidly. This would free up the police force to go after real criminals, harder drug offenders, as well as more serious criminals, such as rapists, murderers, extortionists, things like that. By taxing it, you would take a major debt out of drug cartels. This is due to the fact that logically, majority of people would rather go to the store and buy legally taxed pot, no matter how expensive it is, than risk getting robbed or laced or anything of that nature. You would also take out a huge profit out of criminals' pockets in our own streets, meaning gangs that normally work for drug cartels. Now, I'm not saying you won't have people using it illegally or growing it as illegal. There will be a number out there for this. However, the same with bootleg liquor back in the day, it will decrease over a period of time. There would be a huge amount of tax revenue we could use for education as well as public services. We provide a huge amount of agriculture for our farmers, meaning more profit for them due to the durability and easy to grow. Yes, I do think there should be safety measures taken, such as illegal growing, illegal selling, public intox, as well as DUIs. Although this will be tricky without certified people using professional medical devices to be able to test on the spot. Really, the only area that kind of complexes me is drug testing in a workforce, and this is only due to the fact that it stays in your system for 3 to 4 months based on your fat content. Just like alcohol, I do believe there should be a safety measures installed. And this is the thing. How do you make efforts to, police it still? I mean, you have all kinds of situations arise. Now, I was thinking about this past weekend. That's why it took me a minute before I decided to do anything. How would one determine something like that? Well, logically speaking, I still believe that companies should have the right to say no to their employees using. What that means is, if you're in a certain field, such as, oil field, construction, public works like police officers, firefighters, things that you would have to be absolutely sober to be able to perform. If those companies chose to enact some type of drug testing for their employees, I feel like they should have a right. And as an individual, if you're aware of the fact that these companies want to drug test you still to be employed there, well, then don't apply for that type of job. Because once it becomes legal, you're going to take the taboo effect out of it, just like you did with alcohol. Back in the day, there was far more people drinking when it was taboo. It was like, let's be risky and go to a speakeasy, throw our heels up and, kind of thing like that. And in theory, I feel like marijuana would be the same way. I think there would be a good portion of people that would probably quit smoking it due to the fact that it's not taboo anymore. And vice versa, you're also going to have people that say it's legal. Now I want to be able to do it because it's legal, and that's fine. But let's not take the right for employers to be able to decide that. And over a period of time, if they change their policies based on the fact that they're not getting enough employees, then that's up to them to do as a company, but not really necessarily up to us as a society to say, F you, I don't care about your safety standards. All I care about is what I want to do on the weekend. Even when I worked in the oil field, you randomly would get selected to go do drug testing. We did emergency response type of style of work for it, small confined space human rescue. One day I was in the shop and I got randomly selected to go do a urine test and a breathalyzer test because they wanted to see if you were drinking or not. It wasn't the fact that they were out to get me or anything. It was just a simple fact that it was company policy. And I knew that whenever I was working a job. And that's why the whole time that I worked for that company, I actually did not smoke anything because of that policy. I was making enough money to where I was like, what, screw it. I'll just go get something to drink whenever I get off, And that's what I mean. You're going to have people that think like that because that's a logical person's response, I just think the benefits outweigh the non-benefits. And I think that there are a good number of people that are a certain age bracket that probably feel like it should stay illegal because that's all they know, All they know is the propaganda that people used back in the day. In the 60s, the propaganda that they commonly would use was, well, these people are interfering with the efforts of the war. And they're, being filthy and doing crazy stuff, referring to hippies at the time. You still hear certain people of a certain age still call people hippies. That's not going to change. That's what we call program. that's how they've been taught to think. So you're not going to do anything to destroy that thought process, but we got to move past that thought process and move into the future with it. Like I said before, the tax revenue that we would create would be outstanding. Environment would be more protected because the many uses for the plant itself. Let's forget about smoking for a minute. Let's throw that out the window just for a little bit, and let's get back to, well, how would we use this plant in an efficient way? Well, the oil could actually be used to treat different types of medical conditions, as well as could be refined and turned into a form of gasoline that we could use. That's the fuel part I was talking about before. The leaves itself has health benefits as well. The fibers in it could be turned into rope and clothing, meaning hemp. There are countless things that we could generate profit-wise, and we could really do a huge benefit to our environment by legalizing it, technically speaking. I think we need to get back to that train of thought. Now, as far as smoking goes, I think that it would free up our police force to be able to go after real criminals. I mean, really, when you think about it, it would cut so deep into the profit margin of cartels, because nowadays what I've noticed is there's two different types of style of smokers. You have what they call their brick pack, or in California you'll hear it called Mexican brick pack. In the Midwest they call it Reggie. Other places they call it regular. What that means is it's a lower quality of weed, and 90% of the time it's developed by cartels. They sell a larger portion for a lot cheaper. Then you also have what they call their good. And what that is stuff from other states that has become legal. It's better quality. And, that's that. Now, overall, majority of people would rather go get that. And that's what I meant before. By the average person would rather go pay the extra tax on it, and do it safely and law-abiding way of doing it, meaning that they're realizing that I could do it this way and I won't break any laws, and I'd also give money back to the state as well as the federal government. When I talk about taxes and the revenue, I'm not just talking from a state level, although it would generate huge revenues, huge profits from the tax revenue for it. It would also create a huge chunk of our national debt for the United States government as well, just massive. Studies have shown time and time again, when you look at other states where it's legalized, their actions and the numbers that they're presenting speak for themselves. You don't necessarily have to be like, an accountant to see the benefits of it. Everything will be getting cheaper. I mean, you could even use ink for it. It's so easy to grow that it would probably slowly over a period of time do away with some less environment-friendly businesses. And that's the people that you see, let's throw money behind the scenes, to let's try to keep it illegal. Now, the majority of states are waking up. I mean, we're seeing more and more states, every year, that make it legal. And without any major problems to it. I feel like majority of law enforcement officials want it to be legalized, but I feel like they say that they don't because of the stigma that they'll get being a police officer. But I think that they're intelligent enough to understand that it's going to take a major dent out of street gangs, out of different types of criminals, as well as drug cartels. I mean, once you do that, the drug cartels will only have methamphetamine and only have cocaine that they're going to try to get through illegally. There's a huge number. I mean, when you really think about it, look at some of the illegal immigrants coming over. If you notice, they'll have these big squares on their back. What those squares are a lot of times are marijuana. And they're told by these coyotes that if they bring it over, they get X amount of money or, whatever. Because they're desperate to try to get it over the border. Because, our president's actually doing a pretty good job at securing a lot of things. So now they're coming over in different ways. We're going to go into all that at a different time. This isn't the podcast I wanted to touch on that about. It's just it ties in together. Really, it does. when you look at other countries as well, look at Amsterdam. Now, I don't necessarily agree with some of the things, such as, in Amsterdam, they have specific areas that you can smoke it at. Normally, these areas would be your house, and it would be the designated cafes. You're not able to really walk down the street and just do it anywhere you damn well please. That's not the case. In fact, I found it really astonishing when I found out that Jamaica is actually illegal to be able to smoke it. They kind of like overlook it because it is part of their religion of Rastafarian. However, they will go out there tourist for it. It's not legal in the country. But then when you look at, let's go back to Amsterdam and you look at that. Now, the reason why I say I don't necessarily agree with everything is because in Amsterdam, they also have a red light district. These girls are told that they have to go get sexually tested for sexually transmitted diseases periodically, every so often periodically. And this is designed to keep STDs low in the city. Now, did it stop the illegal prostitution and as a whole? Absolutely not. It did not stop it completely. There's no way that it could stop it completely. Think about it. Is it logical to be able to say, let's stop it completely? Absolutely not. People still find ways to do what they want. Now, the way I think about it is, the government's probably like, okay, if you want to take the risk of going to serve a lengthy jail time by going to get some disease-ridden hooker on the side of the alley instead of paying extra money and go to this other area, whatever, that's on you. Did it stop the illegal actions from people, smoking it wherever they want to? Absolutely not. People still get arrested for it. In fact, if I remember an episode of Locked Up Abroad I watched, there's a good number of tourists locked up in Amsterdam prisons because they're not following their country's laws. Now, there's a lot of politicians I feel that, and politicians and pharmaceutical companies, they're kind of like, well, how do I get my cut? Where do I make my profit at? So often that it goes back to that. Well, I want a piece of the profit. How am I supposed to get a piece of profit? Until I get a piece of profit, I want to keep it illegal because I'm not getting mine. That's where you have different type of laws come in, such as DUI, public intox, bootlegging. Like when people used to bootleg alcohol, same type of fucking punishment should be used for people growing illegal weed. Same type of punishment with alcohol should be intact for the general safety of our communities, meaning DUI. Like when you're driving down a road and you see some dummy like trying to hit a pipe at the same time as driving his vehicle, guess what? That's a DUI. Lock them up, cite them, however the state, city, whatever council decides to do it. And public intox laws, I don't think that, you should necessarily be able to walk around and smoke it wherever the hell you want to, because of the simple fact there is a great number of people that does not like the smell of it, that's allergic to it, that doesn't want anything to do with it. So let's be logical about this. Instead of pissing them off, let's find a different way to do it. Let's make a public intox. Not everybody wants to see somebody drinking a bottle walking down the street, hence public intox laws. So if people wake up, you have the same thing with marijuana. Let's have a public intox law to where if you're seen smoking it outside of a designated area that you're allowed to smoke it at, meaning a cafe or like with alcohol, a bar, or your own house or your own property, the same fucking thing applies. What that will do is generate a type of profit, because whether you want to agree with it or disagree with it, and I'm sure there's a great number of people that will do both, taxpayers pay for every head that's in jail. City officials like that income, okay, because, we'll get into that, a whole different type of thing. I am planning on working on something called the prison reform, going back to how it was an experiment back in the day. We're not going to get into that right now. What I will say is it does generate quite a number of income for the state and for different counties by having a prison. This is why civilian prisons have gotten so popular. A civilian prison isn't state-ran because of the profit that they're receiving from it. We'll get into all that later. Now, moving backwards, that's the reason why I feel we should have different type of laws. One, to protect our children, to protect different people that don't want to be exposed to it. I respect you. You respect me. We voted on it. It's legal. I'm going to do it the right way. You're going to live your life. You may not like me as a person. You may not agree with what I'm doing, but at least I'm not shoving it in your face every single time you blink an eye. Now, with that said, if that'd be kind of like somebody who's against drinking alcohol walking up to a bar. I mean, are you going to accomplish anything? No, you're going to do quite the opposite. You're not going to accomplish anything at all. In fact, you're going to cause a scene and probably end up getting yourself arrested. That's why I said I think the majority of people will be responsible users with it. And I think majority of people would be satisfied with paying the tax. I mean, from what I understand, I think the tax on it in some of the states where it's actually recreational legal, I think it's around 35-40% tax for the state. But is that dampening their people from wanting to pay that tax? Absolutely not. In fact, people are overwhelmingly willing to pay that tax to be able to purchase it legally. I mean, after all, who would want to do it illegally and risk going to jail? I wouldn't. I kind of like being able to go home at the end of the night, So that's the thought process we need to get with. A lot of times I feel like the problem is people, they either go two ways with it. They either go with the propaganda that was used from the 1910s all the way up to the 70s with keeping it illegal. They use a lot of that propaganda because of their, like I said before, that's kind of like what they've been raised around. So that's how they think. And then you have stupid people. I call them stupid because their arguments hold no value against somebody who doesn't like it. And these are people that generally say, I should be able to do it wherever I want to and however I want to, and you shouldn't. No, that's not the way society works, bud. You have to be logical about it. Let's make a peaceful solution to it. I think we could all agree on that. And if you're thinking, why did I choose the song I did? There was an episode of Family Guy where the city of Quahog decided to make it legal. And, everything was good for a while. I really chose that song because I honestly, let's just face it, I like the damn song. I think it's hilarious. Because most people would prefer to do weed over methamphetamine and cocaine, for sure. You know what I'm saying? Generally, people are in a better mood. Honestly, there's so many things to it. Cooking, one of the biggest growing culinary trends right now is marijuana-infused food. People are specializing in that right now. They're specializing in infused beer with the marijuana. So those industries are really kind of growing, and a lot of states where it's still illegal, I kind of feel like we're being left behind because they're going to get so advanced at it that we're going to be scrambling to try to keep up. These states where they're doing that, I mean, honestly, they're just overwhelmingly doing better. I'm not saying everything's going to be peachy perfect. I mean, I think that you're still going to have those type of people that want to do it the wrong way. And earlier when I said that I think because it's taboo, a lot of people will drop off and not use it. This could be really backed up statistically when you look at prohibition in that time period. Because, before prohibition, I think it was like 1 out of every 3 people were drinking somewhere illegally. The reason for this was it was taboo, and it was like kind of made you seek a thrill, with trying to do it. And that's kind of what people's personality traits, unfortunately, are like. They like to do stuff that's wrong. So when it becomes legal, I think that I'm not going to throw a high number out there. I mean, I could. I don't think that's a logical thing to do. But I do feel like let's roll with about 14% of the current marijuana smokers probably would quit smoking because you're taking their thrill away, like every time they're like, ooh, I get to sneak around and do this, you're taking that away from them. So they're probably going to quit using it. And will they be outspoken critics of it later? I doubt it. They might, if that's what's popular. I think that we should really rebuttal this. I think people need to hatch it out more. Living in the state I'm living at, I thought it was a disaster with the way that they were trying to organize to make it illegal, The governor really, she's interested in the pharmaceutical companies being able to make a profit. I mean, That's why they had THC pills since 1996 legal in that particular state. They're little green tablets, because what it does is it makes it to where you have the eating benefits after taking it. Meaning you have an appetite to be able to eat for cancer patients, without the psychedelic effects. When I say psychedelic, what I'm meaning is being able to get high from it, the THC, because THC is the primary ingredient that gets you high. Then they came out with oil, and the oil has health benefits to it. It's a mild pain reliever, and again, it doesn't get you high. She was okay with that. Basically, what it seemed like is the pharmaceutical companies couldn't control it. They couldn't figure out how they're going to get their cut. How are they going to get their profit? Because it seems like you're just going to have all these stores popping up. They're going to cut us out of the profit margin. And that's why you seen that one thing. It was real funny, because when you looked at it, it was like, we're going to have a physician present at the time of every single store that's opening up. They knew that wasn't logical. They knew that would never work. But they also knew by it not working, they couldn't pass it. So I think overall what happened was, completely regulation would have passed, but unfortunately, one of the parties just kind of effed up the senators and forged a bunch of them like a dummy. So if my memory serves me right, I think medical will still get passed. I do think that's a move and a positive step, because I think overall, once people see the results from it being medical, I think it's only a matter of time before it becomes recreational. Once it becomes recreational, we're going to create a whole new revenue system from it. And I really do think that. Now, there's some other sensitive issues with it. A lot of parents have a hard time dealing with children being used or using it for medical reasons, because there's some parents that are like, it helps my kid, I see results of it, I don't understand why you don't, and why you don't like it. And I guess in a way I understand that, because as a parent, I wouldn't want my kid choosing to do that. With that said, if that event ever transpired, I would judge it from a parental stand. This is where I feel like parents need to get back to being parents. I think that the state has far too much say in what us as parents can do. And we're going to do another episode about that too. Sorry about that. But overall, nothing really bad ever happens. You might have some accidents from people doing it too much, and that's why I say we should have DUIs. We should have some type of system in place to protect other drivers from people underneath the influence. The same way we do with alcohol. That's only logical, okay? There are a lot of police officers right now that are jumping on that bandwagon as of last month. We need to regulate it the same way we do with alcohol for driving impairment. That is a very logical thing. That's not something us as a society can go, oh, you guys are all just being stupid, and it doesn't, It kind of does impair your ability to drive. Now, I'm not saying it's going to impair it like you're going to start swerving. I will say it makes your reflexes slower. So your reaction times are going to be slower. And generally people that do it, the high sensation, I would say, with average marijuana, I'm not talking about the super strands, because they are out there. I'm talking about the average strands. Most of the people stay high for about 4 to 5 hours, depending on how much they smoke. Guess what? Alcohol is the same way. So that's why I say we do need to step it up as far as that goes. And public intox, like I said before, absolutely, because I wouldn't want to be walking with my kids somewhere and like a couple guys are smoking it outside of a building, unless that building is a designated building, meaning it's a cafe or it's a store. then I feel like that business should have that right. And me, as a person in the public, are aware of what happens at that building. So as a parent, it would become my decision of whether or not I want to walk over there or not. I'm not going to get mad at them because I'm aware of what's going on. And I made that cautious decision. Now, there are people out there that get so frustrated because so many people just smoke it everywhere. We're states where it's legal. And that's why I say we need to focus on a public in talks type of situation law. It should be relevant to this conversation. It should be relevant to any legalization conversation, because we have to be logical about it. You can't just be an idiot about it. There should be some safety protocol to it. I think that's just an intelligent way to go across it. With that said, I do think that, people should have a right to be able to do it, as long as it's in the right areas to be able to do it. Now, if it violates your religion, then it violates your religion. Just because you believe in a certain way doesn't mean the next person has to. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion. So, I think I've covered quite a bit of different arguments towards it, or things I've come across. That was just a brief history of it. I was just thinking about it. Some of the scenes are just ridiculous on that movie. I mean, really, if you haven't seen Reefer Madness, it's on Netflix. It's at Redbox. You can pretty much find it on YouTube for free. Watch it sometime, because you're going to crack up. Even if you're like somebody who's completely against it, I think you still will find it pretty funny, honestly. Like there's a scene where all of them are sitting around playing the piano and they just go crazy laughing and everything just goes crazy. And people's mindset, how gullible they were, is just phenomenal. So I do think that, like I said before, I think we all need to come together and think about it. Let's talk about it rationally, like adults, not screaming. And there's so many different things that come to my mind right now. I mean, we're half an hour into it, and so many things just now are coming to my mind. Apologize. It's probably my ADHD and Asperger's, but things are just now coming to my mind. Okay. Think back on the I'm 36, so think back to the old school drug commercials. Anybody remember the dog talking? You know what I mean? And the person understanding the dog. I'm sorry, but that person was high that created that thought about that. You really just have to look at that. Let's just look at how far advanced we've come in society and just understand the differences in the opinions, the benefits to it. I think there's so many more benefits than what people are willing to admit. I really do. I just think that there's so many more benefits to it. I think that we should go farther with it. I hope to see it completely legal across the United States in my lifetime. I still don't know if that's going to happen, but the chances are looking pretty good. And to the older crowd that says dope heads and hippies and this and that, I get it. I understand, Another argument I want to throw out there is back earlier when I said how a good portion of people won't smoke it anymore, but there will be some. I've talked to a couple of veterans from Vietnam War who told me it grows wild in the streets in Cambodia, Vietnam, Laos, and most people actually do not do it there. Some do. Like I said, you're always going to have that portion of people that will. You will. But for most people, they just kind of walk past it, That's what I'm saying. Not everybody's going to do it. Quit thinking that it's going to be like this scourge just going to take over the world and everybody's going to be doped out of their mind constantly. And man, that's not what's going to happen. To think about it like that is very immature. I actually think that a good portion is going to quit doing it, and then the rest of them are going to pick it up. You know, some people even go as far as, well, earlier when I said religion, you know, a lot of churches will preach how it's wrong, and they try to do it biblically. You know, in Genesis, there's actually a chapter that said God gave all herb seed-bearing plants to man for man to use, and he was pleased. He didn't specify what type of herbs. I'll give them that. But even their own scientists have said that back in the day, it was commonly used for everything. For everything. So the probability of it being used at that time period is so high that there is a good chance that it was just something that, you know, was fine. That's, I mean, if you religiously say, hey, I don't like it, I don't appreciate it, that's fine. This is why I'm going back to the public intox thing, you know. Let's find a way for everybody to get along about it. Naturally, I mean, I would want to be able to go eat a meal and have to deal with somebody from the table next to me smoking it when I don't like it. I understand. That shouldn't be okay. However, if I'm at a cafe where they specialize in selling it, I'm going to expect it. You know what I'm saying? But if I'm somewhere where it's not being sold there, then I don't think it should be allowed there, because people have a right to be able to eat in peace, you know? And if you want to go enjoy the food high, then, you know, find a way to legally do it and legally use it, and then go take a bus or a taxi over there and have a good time. I just feel like we need to find a more mature common ground with it. Because I feel like most of the time it's an immature playing ground with people arguing about it. Now, I will admit there are nutritionists out there that could give me a run for my money as far as statistics go. I would counter their statistics with how accurate are those statistics whenever they were formed in a time period when people were trying to find every negative thing they could say about it. Who's to say that those are the right statistics? Then I would go and I would pull up modern statistics. The modern statistics will really dwarf the other statistics that's out there. You know what I'm saying? By the way, a lot of people that use prescription narcotics that are heavily narcotics, and I'm not talking, you know, earlier when I said, like, most people get high, it lasts for about 4 or 5 hours, their pain's kind of gone, they could go about their life. Yeah. There's some pills out there where somebody's going to be effed up for a good 6-7 fucking hours, if not longer. And people are just fine with dealing with them in the workplace. In fact, it's become so common it's almost normal. I think I would rather deal with somebody stoned than deal with somebody on narcotics. I would feel a lot safer, in fact, being around them than I would with somebody on a freaking, you know, Valium or some type of opioid. I mean, because really they're just like heroin addicts, only in a pill form. So don't give me those old school statistics about how this is so much more of a better of a method. No, it's not. It's really fucking not. In fact, there's a lot of overdoses, a lot of vehicle manslaughter with people underneath the influence of heavy-duty narcotics like that. A lot of people commit suicide on them. A lot of people can't eat on them. A lot of people can't function on them. It does more harm than it does anything else. However, what it does do is create revenue for the pharmaceutical companies to keep pushing out more. That's why they've come out with that one pill that's a pain reliever pill that's non-addictive. But however, let's look at this logically, because wasn't it not too long ago whenever they came out with another painkiller that they said was non-addictive, it turned out to be one of the most commonly abused prescription pills in the history of mankind. Because guess what? When Lortabs first came out, they were advertised as non-addicted too. But why don't you go tell that to a state to where the pharmaceutical abuse is just fucking skyrocketed, you know? Go tell that to these people with needles in their arms because they started with fucking prescription pills. Or let's backtrack that statement because that's partially true, but the reason why so many states out there have a heroin problem is because people can't afford their pain medicine and they're hooked on their pain medicine, and heroin is cheaper. I think more people would prefer to smoke a joint, take away their pain, go about their lives. And I think it's a hell of a lot more safer than an opioid pill. That can knock you out flat or make you nod out. In fact, a lot of people nowadays, they have instruction videos on codeine, how they use filters and they take codeine pills, they crush them up, they use a certain type of water. I don't know exactly the chemistry of it, but somehow they filter out the Tylenol and it just leaves the codeine. And then they take the codeine, they put it in a can of Sprite or a bottle of Sprite or any other type of fucking alcohol they choose. They put that codeine in there. They put candy in it. And guess what they have? They're no longer taking the fucking codeine. No, they're drinking it. Okay? So I do think that logically legalizing it would have far more better results for the health of the population. The population's health needs attention. We need to find better medicines. And I think that's the way to go. I honestly think with the right type of laws, protecting the general society and protecting our law enforcement officers and protecting people's health and well-being of mind, with those right type of laws and people using it responsibly, I think overall the health of the population will go up, the revenue of each state will go up. I mean, we'd have more money for schools, we'd have more money for public roads. Who knows? Maybe we could do away with these ridiculous toll roads. You know what I'm saying? It's just a win-win-win when you really look at it. And so many times you find out how, people's conception about it. It really is just a wrong conception about it because it's based on propaganda that they've been exposed to. And sometimes it could either be somebody who's like 20 years old, And those 20-year-olds, they only know what they were raised to believe. Now, I'm sure with technology that there's other ways for them to find out stuff. But sometimes they only know what they're taught. And if their parents were taught by their grandparents to think like that, and they've successfully done their job as parents, meaning that that's who they've molded, then that person's opinions are going to mirror the generation of false propaganda. Because that's all they know. So I think more needs to be done. And I think wonderful things will come from it. I really do. And I just hope other people feel the same way. I hope other people wake up. I hope to see the benefits of it come in my lifetime. I've been an advocate for the legalization since I was in high school. I remember Bill Clinton was still president, and I wrote a letter on the White House website with how much revenue that they would get back to solve the national deficit problem. Of course, I didn't get a response. I was a freshman in high school, but you know what I mean? Here I am at 36, and I'm still pushing that agenda. I'm still pushing the benefits to legalizing it. And I don't think that's going to change because that's just who I am, you know? And I've done so much research into it that I think that the argument could be said that we do need to look at it differently. So, with that said, I hope more people wake up, and if you agree with me and you want something said, then you know you want to be able to, like, you know, talk about it. Find a way to contact me. We could do that. I could arrange that. All right. Once again, this Blue Collar Thoughts. Just something was on my mind. Had to let it be said. Everybody have a good day.